What's up, everybody? It's Roman Gennaro, and we're back for another episode of Empire Sports Talk as we inch ever closer to our 100th episode mark. I do believe this is 96. Don't quote me on that, but I believe we're at episode 96. Anyway, as we speak, I'm trying to get this podcast recorded on a Monday afternoon. As we speak, the Mets and Braves are in between games. They're about to start game 2 of the crucial doubleheader that will decide the final playoff spots, as the season ended for 28 teams yesterday, but the Mets and Braves had to make up a doubleheader for rained out games because of Hurricane Helene, and now the doubleheader will decide between the Braves, the Mets, and the idle Diamondbacks, who have nothing to do but watch who's going to go to the playoffs. The Mets won the first game in an absolute thriller that I'm still trying to recover from watching, so they are in. So now the Braves have to win game 2 to get in, or else if the Mets sweep the series, the Diamondbacks get in. We're going to finish with baseball at the end of this. I have a lot to say. As you can probably tell by the hat that I'm wearing on today's podcast, I have a lot to say about a certain subject, but we'll get to that at the end of the podcast. Before we get there, I want to start with a particularly troubling story that came out of college football this last week. And it's not surprising. We knew this is where we were getting to when NIL became a thing, but it has certainly raised eyebrows and not done any favors for the player in question. UNLV starting quarterback, at least for the first 3 games of the season, Matthew Sluka, I hope I'm saying that correctly, decided after a 3-0 start with UNLV that he was going to take a red shirt for the rest of the season, play no more games for UNLV, and transfer to another school at the end of the season, effectively bailing on his team. And he did release a statement as to why he was doing this. I won't read the statement, but it came down to NIL money. Apparently there were promises that were made, quote unquote, to Sluka regarding an NIL deal with the school that did not come to fruition. But as we learned from this situation, Sluka did not have a written NIL agreement with the school at the time. So really, from the outset, it just looks like a bad business move by Sluka, but we'll get to that in a second. He decided that he was done with UNLV. In the middle of the season, they're 3-0. Joke's on him. UNLV beat Fresno State in, I believe it was their conference opener in the Mountain West, 59-14, to improve to 4-0 and break into the top 25. So looks like UNLV will be just fine, and for the sake of the whole situation, I kind of hope UNLV makes the playoff without Matthew Sluka, because I tend to believe, I tend to agree with the idea that this was incredibly selfish. One person that weighed in on this was College Game Day analyst Reese Davis. Had a lot to say about Matthew Sluka's decision to leave UNLV. He said, and I'm reading directly from his quote, he said, Matthew Sluka came from Holy Cross, where he was a terrific player there, but he arrived at UNLV in July. There wasn't a deep-seated tie. Probably the Occam's razor philosophy, the most likely thing, is probably true. It is probably true that he was promised something, likely, and it was not delivered. That's likely true. It is obviously true that he didn't have it in writing. If you make a dumb mistake in life, if I do, if Matthew Sluka does, or whoever, sometimes you have to wear that, man. And going in there and expecting something without writing, and then they don't give it to you, you can't just bail on the team. This came directly from Reese Davis, but I agree with this 100%. This is no longer, and this is why college sports are dying. It's no longer about tradition. It's no longer about the love of the game. It's no longer about conferences or anything. It's all about money now. And when you start paying these players, it's no longer college football. It's a professional sport. And professional sports are a business first. One of the things, I've been to the MLB winter meetings a couple of times, and one of the things they always tell you when you sit down to take part in that job fair, one of the first things they tell you is baseball is a business first and a game second. And we don't often like to think about that, but that's the reality of the situation. But when it comes to something like college football, we seem to see the fun of it starting to disappear, because more players are making, I'll say it, selfish decisions when it comes to NIL, because in the end, you do have to look out for yourself, but you do have teammates out there. And one thing about the transfer portal is that you could view the transfer portal as, I'm in it for myself. I'm going to go where I have the best chance. And you wouldn't necessarily be wrong in that situation. But in this situation with Matthew Sluka, to play 3 games, play well, start 3-0, and then bail on your teammates, this is something different entirely than just entering the transfer portal at the end of a season. You're saying, oh, we won 3 games, I'm using you for my own benefit. I came here strictly for the money. The money didn't show up, and I'm gone. I had 3 good games. That looks good on my resume. See you later. What Reese Davis is referring to, and what we learned out of the situation, was that I don't know what got the deal done. I don't know if it was a purely handshake deal, but Matthew Sluka did not have an NIL agreement in writing. He did not have anything binding in writing from the school. I don't know what the specific promise that was made was, but obviously it didn't get delivered on. And Matthew Sluka said, you know what? I know we're in season. I know these guys are counting on me. I know I'm the leader of the team. I'm the quarterback, but I'm out. And it's not even like I'm out after the season. I'm out right now. I still have one game left where I can redshirt and save this year of eligibility. I'm gonna take it. It's either how big does the missed promise have to be, or how big of a jerk do you have to be to say, I know we preach in the locker room that we're a team and we're in this together and all this stuff, but that's not true at all. I was in it for the Benjamins. The Benjamins didn't show up, and I'm out. Have we forgotten that it's only been a couple of years since that's all you had in college football was the fun and the tradition and the teammates? It's all gone now, and this is why college football and college sports are dying. Because people like Matthew Sluka walk into a locker room and say, all right, guys, rally around me. Let's do this together. Let's go win games. And UNLV's having a good start to the season. Let's potentially go to the college football playoff. But a promise that I wasn't smart enough to put in writing from the school. I allowed them to say these things without putting it on paper and showing it to me, which part of that's on the school too. You got to take care of your people. But I allowed this to happen. And in a time in college sports where you get paid to play, you can hire a lawyer to say, hey, don't agree to that unless they show it to you. You can have somebody be like, slow down. Sluka didn't do that. Sluka shook hands, went to UNLV, and now here we are, 4 games in. UNLV's 4-0. They blasted Fresno State without Sluka. And if I'm a school looking for a quarterback, I'm not saying I don't pick Sluka, because if he's a good quarterback, if you need a good quarterback, it is what it is. But I at least think twice and say, hey, if this guy's not happy, he's going to bail on us immediately. And this is one of the first instances we've had of this where it wasn't like, I'm going to wait till the end of the season. I'm going to look for opportunities elsewhere. Thanks for everything. I'm going to look for opportunities. This was, thanks for nothing, see you, bye, in the middle of the season. Yeah, I find it incredibly selfish, incredibly short-sighted, and I hate that this is where college sports has gone. I knew this was inevitable, that somebody would pull this, but this is honestly horrible. And I hope that Sluka has an opportunity to look back and say that was a terrible decision that I made. Either to agree to go to UNLV without proper agreements and proper things in place and proper things in writing, or to just bail on his team. And I'm more upset about the bailing on his team, because you're taught and you're coached all while growing up like team comes first. Team comes first. But the way that the NIL has shifted college football, team almost doesn't matter anymore to some people. And we've seen that at college and at the NFL. We've seen that team doesn't matter. That it doesn't matter if your team's good because UNLV's playing well. It just matters, where's my money? And for an 18, 19, 20 and year old kids, that's I mean, you wave money in front of them and nothing else matters. And I that's one of the reasons why I was against the NIL thing. But this is just the worst thing I've seen yet, honestly. I don't want to spend too much on this because I have, as you can tell by, again, the hat I'm wearing, I want to get to something else. Next thing I want to talk about, go to the NBA for just a second. The New York Knicks pulled off kind of a surprise trade just here a month or so before the start of the season. The Knicks traded Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Karl-Anthony Towns. Some people believe that this is a confusing trade for both sides. Some are saying that now Anthony Edwards should ask for a trade, all this sort of stuff. But I look at this trade and I think that this is a win for Minnesota. As good as Karl-Anthony Towns is, we've seen that he can be pretty inconsistent at times. And if healthy, and that's a big if because he's had a significant injury history. If healthy, Julius Randle has proved to be one of the best big men in the NBA. You could say that also about Karl-Anthony Towns. But when healthy, I believe that Julius Randle is a little bit more consistent than Karl-Anthony Towns. And in addition to Julius Randle, the Timberwolves are getting Dante DiVincenzo, who could provide shot making, who could provide a little bit of offense, which we saw in the playoffs last year. Minnesota needed a little bit more of that down the stretch when Anthony Edwards was getting tired or getting double teamed or whatever it was, and they addressed that in the draft, and I thought it was really good. But getting Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle, I believe, puts Minnesota over top in this trade. You could argue that Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns, when healthy, is an even swap, a pretty even swap. They're both really good big men. I would prefer Julius Randle. That's why I would say that I think Minnesota won this trade. But on top of that, they added an offensive piece that I think could be very, very, very important come playoff time. So I just want to touch on that real quick. A shocking trade, and I think the person that was the most shocked by this trade was Karl-Anthony Towns, as he simply responded with the wide open eye emoji. I don't think he saw this coming, and I don't think we as NBA fans saw this coming, but I do think it's going to have a significant impact down the stretch. It's going to give New York a little bit more size, as they were unable to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein, and it's going to give Minnesota a little bit more offensive firepower that they needed down the stretch a year ago. Moving on to Major League Baseball, and this is where we're going to finish, but before we get to our main topic, I need to call out the fact that on Friday night against the Detroit Tigers, which, how about the Detroit Tigers? You know, I said last week that a year ago I picked them as a dark horse playoff candidate, and that did not happen. I liked what they were building, but I guess I was a year early, and now they have clinched a playoff spot to begin, as we are filming this, tomorrow, Tuesday, against the Houston Astros. But on Friday night against the Detroit Tigers, the Chicago White Sox lost 4-1, giving them their 121st loss of the season, setting a new Major League record for most losses in a season, breaking the tie with the 1962 New York Mets for the most losses in Major League Baseball history. And the White Sox finished the regular season with a horrifying record of 41-121. Now, as I said, this breaks the record with the 1962 New York Mets for the most losses in a Major League Baseball season. But because of the fact that in the 60s, Major League Baseball seasons were 160 games as opposed to 162, the Mets finished with a record of 40-120 as opposed to the White Sox record of 41-121, making it so that the Mets still mathematically have the worst record in Major League Baseball history as far as percentage points. The 1962 New York Mets had a win percentage of .250, and the 2024 White Sox had a win percentage of .253. So by the skin of their teeth, the White Sox avoid the worst record mathematically in the history of Major League Baseball, but still not a milestone you want to reach. 121 losses is the new worst mark in Major League history. Now, I wanted to spend the most time, so I saved this for last, on the team that I am currently repping on my hat. And this hat was given to me several years ago by a friend of mine who played in the Oakland system. And so I thought, what a better time to break out this hat than what I want to say about the situation going on in Oakland. As we know, the final game at the Oakland Coliseum was played on Thursday afternoon, with the Athletics ending their tenure with a victory against the Texas Rangers. And there's been a lot of stuff about the Oakland Athletics ending. A lot of writers, a lot of news people in the Bay Area, some of which I'm going to reference here in a bit. And I spent the majority of the last couple of days watching those media pundits in California talking about this, and because I wanted to, instead of going off the cuff, instead of just having a couple of prepared notes to touch on and then the rest is me, I wanted to prepare basically a statement of my own based on what's happened here, and most of it's going to be in reference to the letter that A's owner John Fisher thought it would be a good idea to send to fans after the final game, and this letter shredded by pretty much everyone that had a chance to read it. Obviously, the A's are going to be playing, most likely, next. That's the messy part of this whole thing. There's nothing set in stone right now. It's the messiest part of this whole thing. The only thing that we know for a fact is that Oakland is leaving. It's assumed that they are playing in Sacramento for the next year or 2 or 3, whatever. It's assumed that they're going to be moving to Vegas after that. But there's no private funding for that site in Vegas. They haven't started building yet. There's no concrete idea that they're going to be able to host. The A's aren't even guaranteed to be able to host playoff games in Sacramento should they get there. And if we saw anything from the second half of the season, the A's were one of the best teams record-wise in the American League in the second half of the season. So there is a chance that this team could be viable in 2025. But apparently there's no assurances that even if the record allows, the A's would be able to host a playoff game in Sacramento. So the whole thing is a mess. But A's owner John Fisher released this letter following the conclusion of games at the Oakland Coliseum. And I won't read from the letter, but I took out a couple of things that I've heard from other people that there were sections of this letter that just were laughable. And I'm also going to mention, as I said, some of those media pundits in the Bay Area. A's owner John Fisher stated that his number one goal since buying the team in 2005 with managing partner Lou Wolf was to win championships and build a new stadium in Oakland. You heard that? In 2005, John Fisher said his main goals were to win championships and build a new stadium in Oakland. That was 19 years ago, and here we are. But then we know for a fact that his managing partner at the time, who has since turned over entire ownership of the Athletics to John Fisher, Lou Wolf's main objective was to exit Oakland, was to bring the Athletics out of the Bay Area. It's a bit counterproductive that you have an owner here on the Swan Song Day, on the day of reckoning, say it was our number one goal to stay here and build a new stadium, when there's evidence and there's proof that his managing partner primarily wanted to leave that place that you're promising was the goal that you build a new stadium. And so I want to point out, of those two goals, the Athletics didn't get close to either one. They had a couple of playoff runs in the mid-2010s, but they really have not gotten close. They've really been one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball during John Fisher's tenure. John Fisher came in after the Moneyball thing was happening. There's nothing in John Fisher's tenure that you can point to and say, hey, good job, dude. They're nothing. And then he goes on to say in the letter that he saw 5 different sites for this new ballpark in Oakland. Those have been greatly exaggerated, and really the only legitimate deal that was that they were going after, the only one that got anywhere close, was the Howard Terminal deal, which John Fisher walked away from when they were getting close. The city of Oakland was trying to do everything they could to offer transportation, to offer anything they could to get the Athletics to stay. Now, granted, getting anything done in Oakland is extremely difficult, extremely toxic. The government there has its issues. There's a reason why Oakland has lost all 3 of its major sports franchises in the last 5 years. The Raiders moved to Vegas. The Warriors moved across the bay to San Francisco. And now the Athletics. Also in Fisher's letter, he mentioned the history of the Athletics, beginning in Philadelphia, then in Kansas City, then in Oakland. This was not the attempt at nostalgia that it may have appeared to be. This was an attempt to pass the buck and say, this is just part of the game. Hurt feelings are part of the game. Say, I know your feelings are hurt, but Kansas City hurt Philadelphia's feelings. Oakland hurt Kansas City's feelings. And now Vegas is hurting Oakland's feelings. For context, he's referring to the fact that from 1901 until 1954, the Athletics played in Philadelphia. From 1955 until 1967, it was the Kansas City Athletics. And from 1968 until 2024, it was the Oakland Athletics. This was John Fisher passing the buck and saying, hey, I know your feelings are hurt, but this is just the way the game goes. No, John, it's not. The game was different back then. Teams moved for a variety of reasons. Yes, money changed hands. Yes, owners were selfish. But it's different now. As I said, you're trying to say is like, hey, it's not on us. Like, this team has moved 3 times. That's just the way it goes. But as I mentioned, your managing partner, Lou Wolf, wanted to leave Oakland when you and he bought the team back in 2005. And then you think about that and you're like, well, you said in 2005 that your goal was to build a new stadium. You knew in 2014 that your contract with the Coliseum was up in 2024. You started active negotiations in 2018. You had 19 years to get it done. And you really didn't get close. And the one time that you did get the closest, you chose to walk away and then turn around and almost immediately commit to a site in Las Vegas. This isn't how the way it goes. You pushed it that way. The site where the Oakland Coliseum is would have been perfect. Several other sites would have been perfect. Sites that you didn't visit. You say you visited 5 sites. That's been proven that you made phone calls and you didn't take meetings. You didn't get very far. You didn't look at these 5 sites. You said, oh, that's an option, and then moved off of it. There was a columnist from the San Francisco Chronicle, Ann Killian, that put it the best way that I think anyone can put it. And she said, and it's crass, but she said, no one wants to hear from the murderer at the funeral. Because that's the way that John Fisher's being viewed in Oakland today, is that he had a chance to save the Athletics. He had 19 years to get a deal done, to get funding, to sell the team, countless number of things. And here we are in 2024, 19 years later. You said your main objective was to win championships and build a new stadium. You didn't get close to either one. And one of the best things I heard was from ABC7 News Bay Area. Larry Beal, the sports director, reamed out Fisher on the air for not even trying to entertain the real possibilities to stay. One last point of concern from Fisher's letter said, I wish I could talk to each one of you, speaking to fans. And Larry Beal and not just Larry Beal, but pretty much everyone that I watched talk about this, had the same sentiment, and it said, no, you don't. Larry Beal pointed out, he said, we, the media, have been trying to talk to you for years. And he said, he doesn't talk to the media. He doesn't talk to fans. He doesn't walk around the ballpark. He doesn't make himself available. So you can't say, I wish I could talk to each one of you individually, when you had 19 years to do just that and you never did. One of the premier sports guys in Oakland is called you out on air before ripping your letter to shreds. He called you a liar, John Fisher. Another prevailing sentiment from those who reacted to Fisher's letter was how cheap he is. Instead of lowering ticket prices for the final game, he increased them. The cheapest ticket I believe you could find to that final game was $65. And Killian mentioned that the bases were being replaced after each inning and sold, not given away, but sold to fans. One guy reportedly paid upwards of $1,000. So even in the Coliseum's final days, John Fisher was being a skinflint, was being a cheapskate, was squeezing every dollar he can out of fans that deserved better. One other thing Larry Beal mentioned was that John Fisher is friends with Warriors owner Joe Lacob, who knows a thing or two about spending money to make money, something that Beal said that Fisher is not willing to do. Lacob apparently made multiple attempts to buy the Athletics from Fisher to keep them in Oakland and was rejected. Larry Beal referred to Fisher as a, quote, serial penny pincher, saying that he's destroyed his family's great name and legacy due to his cheapness. John Fisher does not know the value of a dollar because he came from a multimillionaire family. He came from a family that has made a fortune from good business deals and has built up a good legacy. And now Larry Beal says, John Fisher, you've destroyed it. And as I said, Larry Beal said all this before ripping up John Fisher's letter on live TV. This was like a 4, 5, 6 minute clip, and it was passion is the best way I know to describe it. Oakland fans are furious. It's like, yes, Oakland's not the best city to do business in. Yes, that stadium was falling apart. But as Ann Killian pointed out, it's one of the last places in Major League Baseball where you can go to a game with your whole family. You can bring your kids. You can bring your parents. The grandparents can bring the grandkids. Like, it's an accessible experience for fans. And she said that she believes that that's going away in Major League Baseball. Oakland was one of the last places that you could do that, and now it's gone. Oakland A's baseball has been a proud franchise since 1968. One of the most beloved franchises by fans. It's where Crazy George Henderson started the wave. It's the iconic earthquake during the World Series. So many things. So many iconic things. Moneyball happened at the Oakland Coliseum. Many broadcasters that we know today have said the memories that they have there. Matt Vasgersian had a very poignant and emotional tribute to the Oakland Coliseum on MLB Network ahead of the last game. And now it's just gone. And as Jeff Passan pointed out, it didn't have to go this way. Yes, Oakland's politics and trying to get things done there are incredibly difficult in recent years. As I mentioned, the Warriors, Raiders, and A's have all left the city. And that's on them. And Major League Baseball is certainly complicit in this, as the owners voted to approve the A's move to Vegas. And that's what led Jeff Passan to say it doesn't have to be like this. The owners approved this. Hold them accountable. And time is not up yet. Oakland fans are still fighting with so much up in the air about the Vegas stadium, about where they're going to play beyond 2025. It's a slim chance, but there's still a chance. Because nothing, shockingly, is set in stone about this whole thing. It's going to be years before a stadium is built in Vegas, if a stadium is built in Vegas. The A's don't have a concrete plan for Vegas. They're playing in a minor league park in Sacramento for the foreseeable future. We think a proud franchise reduced to this. A great sports city left without a single team. And as Jeff Passan put it, and as I will reiterate again, it didn't have to be this way. That's all I have for you on this episode of Empire Sports Talk. I am Roman Gennaro. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to know when new episodes like this one are released and the other videos we have coming up. As we approach the 100th episode, I'm hoping to get some really cool stuff in time for the 100th episode. Hang with us. And to all Oakland A's fans, I apologize. You deserve better. I'll see you on the next one.